not really a cupcake, but I am super baked, thanks to Mood Can.
Mood is third-party tested.
Good afternoon. If it's your first time, make sure to hit that like, that follow, or subscribe button, whichever you'd feel comfortable doing. We're live on multiple streams, multiple sites. We're going to continue reading. Not sure, I don't know. Not sure if I'm going to go to another chapter or not, but after this book, I'm thinking the two after it are actually quite wonderful, and I kind of want to learn a little bit more about what Elisha and Elijah, you know, kind of did. And obviously there's more to learn, as with anything. But today we're going to be in 2 Samuel 8. My kitty, I'm like, she's going to leave. I hope not. She likes to stand up in the middle of me talking, so I hope y'all are having a wonderful day, though. There's a network error. What happened? I don't know. There's only one. I used to be able to change the why does it say the bitrate is so bad? I mean, it makes sense, I suppose, if I... Why wouldn't it let me change to another, You know, it's only letting me go to 180p, but it should be... There should be all types of quality options. So I hope it didn't... I hope it's not saying that everyone has to have 180p, because I'm gonna have to change that to 720, I think. So yeah, that's not supposed to be what it does, but maybe they changed something and I didn't get the memo. That's probably what happened. So either way, I hope you're all having a blessed day. Once again, in the meantime, while we listen to some good lo-fi music, feel free to grab your Bible if that's what you want to do, or feel free to listen along. And I will try to figure out what is taking so much away from the bitrate. I don't know what it is, but I hope that it clears up. That'd be wonderful. So, but God is doing a lot of different things. There's so much going on in the world. You know, we can talk about what everybody else covers, but I don't see the point. You know, we get pulled into all of these things that we didn't even have to put our heart or our energy to or towards. And it just keeps that endless cycle of sin and like negativity going. And, you know, I can't say that things ever will get better if you keep repeating the same thing over and over and over again. So, I promise, if you turn from what you're doing, you will see things like mental health. You know, Brandon Lake is an example. He, you know, talked about it in one of his songs, you know, mental health restored. He, among many other believers, have seen miracles. You know, God's healed me in so many different ways. I don't even know, like, there's no physician that could ever explain to me what was wrong after years and years and years. You know, there's obviously injuries, things that need to repair, but the suffering kept on going on and on for 15 to 17 years, close to that. Actually, it's like 19. Wait, 21. It's 20 or 20 years. I thought it was less than that, but time goes on, you know, when you move past certain things. So, hey, how's it going, Zenboy? Good to see ya. hope you're having a good day too. Thanks for stopping in. But today, we're going to just read where we left off. I'm going to be doing 2 Samuel 8 to, maybe just stop at 9. But it's such a short verse. I want to, relearn how to read effectively. So part of it is kind of like continuing to read, even though I'm going to do things that I know, like stutter and things like that. It probably will happen, but practice is ideally the cure. God is the cure above all things. But I'm noticing if I read it ahead of time, I don't trip up on talking as much, and I normally do. So maybe reading, well, first of all, it would be great to know what I'm going into off the jump. To begin with, that'd be wonderful. But, I'm like, am I learning? I don't want to pull away from it, so it actually probably would be better if I read it before streaming it to give me a little bit more of an idea. But I do like to learn, and I think it's important to show that, like, willingness, to learn, because we all have things that we could do better at, and that's kind of where, I see a lot of the answers, things I've wondered for years. No doctor could, answer for me. A lot of money was wasted trying, and I think that it was good for a season. But there's a point to which you have to kind of let go and fully surrender even your worry, because if you have an injury, for instance, or you have something that you live with and it stops you from doing things like providing for yourself, a lot of times it's money that it comes into, and that's like a huge thing. But it's still, regardless of all that, the most important thing is that we give it our worries and our cares, and we pray for each other. So if you ever have had anything that you needed prayer for, you maybe felt like, feel too funny to ask, it's not a problem. That's why we are here. I think a part of what we are created to do is to love each other. And, we all have fallen short, but, we're supposed to love each other and, pray for each other, because that's really where the true healing is. It's in the spirit. This body is flesh. It's temporary. And God will, if we remain obedient, it's kind of the reward. But the heart has to be postured properly. It can't be with just the intention of, I want all these things, so I'm only going to do what's right because I'm going to gain something. We should do all things without the expectation of receiving. That's where my mind is. And I know that it wasn't always that way. Oh, she just sat next to me. I was like, where'd she go? But yeah, she's a cute kitty. You doing okay? Hello. But I'm wondering if she's like wants to get up. So yeah, she's adorable. She's a nice, cute kitty. But great to see you, Zen Void. I'm going to continue on now. I'm going to continue now to the reading. Let's see what we got here. So keep that on the manager. 2 Samuel 8. It's going to be 2 Samuel 8 and 9, because I'm going to read the chapter 9 also. And of course, as I said already, if you need prayer, if you ever do, you can feel free to talk about it. Or you can find me on YouTube or Twitch, wherever it is, and send me a private message if you don't want it to be if it's private. So we are supposed to pray for each other. So in the meantime, 2 Samuel 8 is talking about David's victories. After this, David defeated the Philistines and subdued them. And David took Metheg Ammah out of the hands of the Philistines. And he defeated Moab, and he measured them with a line, making them lie down on the ground. 2 lines he measured to be put to death, and 1 full line to be spared. And the Moabites became servants to David and brought tribute. David also defeated Hadadezer, the son of Rehob, king of Zobah, as he went to restore his power at the river Euphrates. And David took from him 1,700 horsemen and 20,000 foot soldiers. And David hamstrung all the chariots' horses, but left enough for 100 chariots. And when the Syrians of Damascus came to help Hadadezer, king of Zobah, David struck down 22,000 men of the Syrians. Then David put garrisons in Aram of Damascus, and the Syrians became servants to David and brought tribute. And the Lord gave victory to David wherever he went. One moment. Oh. I'm gonna have to get her out of my room from now on if that's the case, because can't have it interrupt me all the time. Hey, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome, Zen, everybody. Thank you so much. Welcome to the family. Appreciate you joining. But it's great to see you. Hope you're having a wonderful day, Zen. Let's go! I need to shorten that, but I love it. It's such a banger. But I'm like, it could be, I think they have one short version. But welcome. Great to have you. So yeah, let's continue on. Oh. I'm like, where is the atmosphere? Where is the music? All right. So continuing on, chapter 8, verse 8. And from Betah and Berothai, cities of Hadadezer, King David took very much bronze. I think it's really interesting, all of these names. I really want to learn how to enunciate them because they don't have like a phonetic or any type of asterisks or accents on it. So I don't know if I'm saying it right, but they definitely had interesting names. Like, they were unique, very unique. So, verse 9, I think here it's going to continue on to David's officials. So I think it's his army, the military. When Toi, king of Hamath, heard that David had defeated the whole army of Hadadezer, Toi sent his son Joram to King David to ask about his health and to bless him because he had fought against Hadadezer and defeated him. For Hadadezer had often been at war with Toi, and Joram brought with him articles of silver, of gold, and of bronze. There also King David dedicated to the Lord, together with the silver. Goodness gracious. So, there literally is, I don't know if there are any actually, since AI has began to flag everything. I don't think there's any videos or any music that you can actually play where it will be ad-free. Like, they say it's DMCA free and copyright free, but then I'll get a copyright for it. I'm like, okay. So hopefully we're good. But I do like the lo-fi music, so I have to find another YouTube maybe, or maybe I should just make all the music, right? Just record a 4 hours worth of playing. I'll do it live. So let's go back to 10, even though I'm stumbling over my words here. Toi sent his son Joram to King David to ask about his health and to bless him because he had fought against Hadadezer and defeated him. For Hadadezer had often been at war with Toi, and Joram brought with him articles of silver, of gold, and of bronze. There also King David dedicated to the Lord, together with the silver and gold that he dedicated from all the nations he subdued, from Edom, Moab, nations, the Ammonites, the Philistines, Amalek, and from the spoil of Hadadezer, the son of Rehob, king of Zobah. And David made a name for himself when he returned from striking down 18,000 Edomites in the valley of Salt. Then he put garrisons in Edom throughout all Edom, and all the Edomites became David's servants. And the Lord gave victory to David wherever he went. So David reigned over all Israel, and David administered justice and equipped to all his people, and equity. Joab the son of Zeruiah was over the army, and Jehoshaphat the son of Ahilud was recorder, and Zadok the son of Ahitub and Ahimelech the son of Abiathar were priests, and Sariah was secretary, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was over the Cherethites and the Pelethites, and David's sons were priests. That's a good book. Definitely, I think more learning. There's a lot of like names there, so I think it's like it's that genealogy, something like that. Kind of learning the names and like the different offsprings that came from David a little bit. But yeah, we're gonna go right into chapter 9. Chapter 9, David's kindness to Mephibosheth. That's it. The second one, I think. So chapter 9, 2 Samuel. And David said, "Is there still anyone left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" Now there was a servant of the house of Saul whose name was Ziba, and they called him to David. And the king said to him, "Are you Ziba?" And he said, "I am your servant." And the king said, Is there not still someone of the house of Saul, that I may show the kindness of God to him?" Ziba said to the king, "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is crippled in his feet." The king said to him, "Where is he?" And Ziba said to the king, "He is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, at Lodebar." Then King David sent and brought him from the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, at Lodebar. And Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David and fell on his face and paid homage. And David said, "Mephibosheth." And he answered, "Behold, I am your servant." And David said to him, "Do not fear, for I will show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan, and I will restore to you all the land of Saul, all the land of Saul your father, and you shall eat at my table always. And he paid homage and said, What is your servant that you should show regard for a dead dog such as I? Then the king called Ziba, Saul's servant, and said to him, All that belongs to Saul and to all his house I have given to your master's grandson, and you and your sons and your servants shall till the land for him, and shall bring in the produce, that your master's grandson may have bread to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, shall always eat at my table. Now Ziba and 15 sons and 20 servants. Then Ziba said to the king, According to all the servants, according to all that my lord the king commands his servant, so will your servant do. So Mephibosheth ate at David's table, like one of the king's sons, and Mephibosheth had a young son.
10 out of 10 friends say you have to go to that wing place. And that pizza.
Okay. See, this is why I need to get rid of it. Just get rid of it. Just sit here in dead silence too, right? Just sit here in silence. No, that's not fun. It's not fun. That's literally why I do it. Okay, so anyways, the last two verses of chapter 9 read, And Mephibosheth had a young son, whose name was Micah. And all who lived in Ziba's house became Mephibosheth's servants. So Mephibosheth lived in Jerusalem, for he ate always at the king's table. Now he was lame in both his feet. What an interesting. It's always interesting. But to think, it all began. That seems to have began with David, you know. Yeah, I did. I was very much involved with the church for the very, I guess you could say, first 13 or 15 years, and then I ended up leaving for reasons, and then I kind of left. I got my degree, got college, worked in the music industry for quite a while, and then after school, I opened up, I guess you could say, a music production service, and then I was told, stop listening to music. That was what God told me to do, right after I finished my degree. So it was very interesting, you know, giving up everything I learned to follow God, because I kind of was right in the, I mean, everybody kind of hears all the drama now with Hollywood. Well, I was in that same element, and I was like, I don't know, I didn't feel like I was supposed to, and it came up to a point where I had to decide, am I gonna, I guess you could say, conform? Am I gonna conform to what they want? Am I gonna give them dignity? Am I gonna do this, that, you know, anything they want? And as many people have already seen, there's lots of stuff coming out right now. And that was right before, you know, I just kind of said, all right, God, you know, I don't know what you're gonna do, but I'm gonna give it up. I stopped listening to music for 7 years. And this was about 7 or 8 years now. So it was definitely a change, you know, going from being raised in the church, knowing God's word, kind of hearing it, but I had what you could say, a disability to read. I never was able to read like left to right. My brain was not figuring it out. Learning to talk and all that stuff was actually a challenge. And then after a long time of practicing, you know, God healed it. So I still sometimes have a problem reading, but you know, I just kind of work through it. But yeah, I did definitely grow up in a Christian home. But yeah, it was a Christian lifestyle, but there was all types of things that we all experience, you know, with you know, my parents were new believers at that time. Like, they weren't brand new, but they were definitely, like, you know, learning some things with parenting and stuff. And so I had to kind of like go back and like think and pray about like all the different things that I had been through to kind of get to the point where I am now. And it was a lot of mistakes. You know, I can't say that I really made many good decisions. Um, you know, but you live and you learn. I think the biggest part of all that is, you know, God will give you a testimony, and it's for other people. You know, I could go into a whole novel of explanation with all the different things that I had experienced in my life, and I could sit here and tell you I tried everything and it didn't work. There was nothing on this earth that could ever, you know, heal, mend, distract, forget. There's a lot of things that people, you know, even if they are very mature and, you know, wise, if they're not familiar with, like, let's say, watching something that's blatantly evil, you know, like I'm choosing to watch something like that, those types of things kind of didn't convict me for a long time. My idea of why I was even bothering to watch those things was because in my heart I felt like I was researching. But then, you know, you can go back to the word and see, like, it specifically tells you to flee, to run from certain things. And I was not like practicing that. I was more like, I'm going to be okay. I believe in God, but I wasn't really like, you could say, outspoken. I was telling people like that was my faith. But, you know, most people would, they would reject what I would say or try to push me into like, oh, well, you don't date and you don't do this and you don't do that, so you must be this, right? So people tried to change me as I continued to go further and further, not just in my own life, but society, you know, going into the world. And that's exactly it. You know, for a long time, I definitely lost confidence, and there was a lot of like pain and hurt, and so I had to pray, you know, nonstop. And so 7 to 8 years ago, when I made the decision to, you know, quit, retire from the whole music industry, the next year was their whole theme of everything is satanic and stuff, and I was like, wow, I got out of there at the right time. But you know, I had things that you're seeing now said to me, like, oh, you don't know how to sell your soul. We can show you. The whole thing is not like fabricated. It's real. And so I said no, I'm not. And that was kind of the really, really hard part. You know, I was believing at that point. I was like, all I had was faith. You know, I had to step out in faithfulness. And I did, and I saw everything that kind of, I built so much up, and I networked so much that I had a lot of different, you know, tools and people that wanted to, you know, help me, but God was saying, no, give it up. I want it. And so I gave it to God. And, you know, I kind of just, at that point, I kept trying. There was a long time where I just gave up. You know, I was trying to use all the things that I could in this world to mend and heal, and it wasn't doing anything. Even to the point where totaling 4 different cars, breaking 7 bones, tearing multiple tendons, spine injury, major mental health, spiritual attacks, like nonstop. You know, I knew like that it wasn't from nothing. You know, we have to take what we experience and actually step out in faithfulness. It's kind of the same thing as you would say if you were to take a leap of faith with like a career choice or moving away from your hometown. It was pretty hard. It was really challenging. So the best part of all this was throughout the years, I wasn't able to see the change. I'm almost 18. do you have any advice for me? Well, if you have a question of anything in particular, I do have experience living on my own, and a lot of mistakes. So I do have advice, but I haven't been through everything. So if there's any like things specific, you don't have to like go into detail if you don't want to explain it, but give me an idea of what you're wondering, and maybe I have an idea. But beyond everything, I just have to pray about it. Trust the Lord. Not be impatient. There's a lot of good qualities that you can gain a lot of knowledge from experiencing things in this world, but you can also watch from the outside and you can see how it affects other people. So everyone has such a unique understanding and brain. There's like all these different things that we're going to be tempted with in life. I can't sit here and say that everybody went through it for nothing. What I went through, I don't think I would have come to Christ if I had gone any other direction, if I had not gone through all the things. Because it took losing everything for me to understand the value. And I think that was kind of what God wanted to really show me. Something just crashed in the other room. No idea. But if you don't want to, type it, you can feel free to send me a whisper if you're on Twitch. That's also another way you can discuss it also. But there's a lot of good advice. I could tell you a lot of different things from, don't take the chance. Just don't do it. Don't invite romance before marriage. That's a huge one. But the day and the reality of what we're living in right now, we have to be so much more careful, because if we let something in, we might not be able to stop doing it sometimes ever. But people are tempted with a lot of things, like there's things like smoking, there's things like abusing things like substances, abusing things like spending all your time in your phone. There's a lot of different things that pull you away, and it's not just one thing. I think that's kind of what God is getting at when he says, no sin is greater than another. They all separate us or pull us further from God. So, being 18, you're gonna learn. You're gonna be going out into the world if you have not yet. Depending on if you've gone to public school, if you hadn't, if you've already gone to college, all these different things are going to expose you to circumstances that you have to either stand up for what you really believe and not be swayed and not conform to the ideology of this world, but you have to stay and remain in the ideology of Christ, if that makes sense. A lot of it seems lonely, so what I would really suggest is getting involved in a church if you have not already. There's a lot of ways you can reach out or get involved with, let's say, your community. So right now, let's just say you're in a specific location, and let's say music is not the industry. They don't have studios, they don't have musicians. Well, you might have to move or leave in the future, right? These things kind of all, they have a location. So the best thing you can do when things are not, the best thing you can do when things aren't immediately around or immediately available, where access is limited, is to pray about it first. You have to pray about everything, because if it's not what God wants, it's it says in the Bible, I'll have God's will be done, but not mine. There's a big important part to that, which is your heart. What is your heart posture? Are you asking for this thing because you want it? Do you need it? But he knows what you're already gonna do if he does give it to you. So, you know, sometimes we don't immediately get what we want and that what we're desiring because it's a protection. So we have to also look at it in that way too. You know, we don't want to step outside of God's protection and get hurt and then have to do therapy and other things like that just to get back to where we once were. So, you know, there's a protection in it. So as far as like what you want to do for your future, you know, I had done what I wanted to do. I learned what I wanted, but after all of that time, getting 2 degrees and networking for years, staying up till 4 a.m., waking up at like 10 p.m. because that's the hours that, you know, concerts and music all kind of begins. So depending on what path you want to go to, you know, you have to kind of, you know, pray about it. If you don't have any idea at all, you know, I would say think about things you enjoy doing. And then think about things that you like to do as a hobby. There's a lot of things now that there never was access to that we can actually do, like make money off of. And, you know, a lot of times that's kind of the question, like, where do I begin? And, you know, you might want to do multiple things. So if you have a lot of energy, you know, you can put it to multiple things. But if you're talking about a career, you know, a career is something that, you know, I think God will put on your heart. You know, we're all wonderfully made and very peculiar people. Some people are good at making food. Some people are good at, you know, hearing a tune. Some people are good at, you know, talking with people. So you can look at customer service roles, corporate, executive level. Like where do you want to go? Where do you want to work? Or if it's a career, how do you want to spend your time? You know, people that love animals, they can get involved in, you know, the local animal shelter. They can get involved with like working hands-on as like a biologist if there's a local park, or, you know, they might even hire for zoos. I don't know, but there's places like that, like sanctuaries and stuff like that, where different animals are. And then, you know, that's kind of one of my passions, is I love animals, but I don't know how to take care of them all. So that's a good question, but it ultimately comes down to what makes you happy. You know, does making people's day brighter make you happy? There's hospitality roles, where you have like, you know, one-on-one contact with people. You talk, you shake their hands, and then that also can go into sales if you know, do things like, you know, real estate is a very profitable business, and you still have that. Like, you have to be personable, and if you don't want to be like talkative, you can also get different, you know, jobs. Like if you want to do part-time, for instance, let's say you just want something to help you pay a couple bills, something that's not going to be full-time, you know, try it out. They might even have a contract or a temp position. But if it's like, you know, for instance, a doctor or something, you have to have a badge or something like that. You know, you can achieve all of that ahead of time. I think there's like what do they call it? You go and you get taught. It's like a mentorship. You go, you may know somebody actually. You go to a place and you take a class for like 5 hours, similar to getting a driver's license, and then you kind of just get your certification and you're out of there. But it takes studying before that. So you could do security, protection. But, you know, it ultimately comes down to your aspirations. Like right now, if you don't have to worry about paying for a home, then that's one example of like, you know, you're able to use time to do more than one thing. So do you want to be spending your time learning how to be the best in your career, or do you want to, you know, stay at home and spend time with family and work a part-time job to kind of feel comfortable, and then in time, you know, a couple days, couple weeks, you know, you prove yourself, you move on to a full-time position. You know, that's kind of also something you can do, is try it out, especially if you haven't ever worked it. There's a lot of different options you could do. If it's communications, you could do events. Your local parks have events usually. You could also look at like, well, what does your county have? Is there a community center? You know, who's needed there? There's a lot of things you could get involved with there. And then I highly encourage you, if at anything, to start. If you have any free time, just start serving, like the rescue mission. You know, making meals for the homeless, making, you know, serving the community, not necessarily for monetary gain. So it depends on your heart. I feel like I'm stopping these way more frequently than usual. Okay. Shh. 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 Okay. Yeah, no, I'm.
Has all kinds of stays because some want a house in the desert. Others do not.
Yeah, no
Find
problem.
Exactly what you're booking for.
There's a lot of different things you could try. So, yeah, you know, that's a little bit. And if you want any like things specific, you can message me if you'd like on, you know, Twitch if you want. You know, I can maybe explain a little more or something. However, but it's my pleasure, of course, to, you know, give any type of insight. But above all, no matter what it is, make sure that you keep God first. Because if you're going out into the world, you need God to keep you strong. And if you're going, and I think it's a really good path, is to find a job with your church or to get involved, you know, somehow. You know, you can even volunteer at your church as a way of volunteering. So, you know, but you got it. Just know that you are able, you are capable. That's kind of one of the biggest things, is confidence. If you haven't tried it yet, then you shouldn't be beating yourself up saying, oh, I'm not going to do it, or, you know, the lies that the devil wants to tell you. They'll sit there and say, oh, well, you're not good enough at that, you're not good enough at this. The devil will try to put everything in your head that is negative, and many times he can use people around you. So be careful at what you choose to believe that other people say, because God says you are loved, you are perfect, and most of all, you're his child, so he loves you. And there's nothing more important than God loving you. So keep him first. That's really the best bit of advice that I could give anybody. But thank you so much for stopping by again, and thank you for having a conversation. It's always a blessing to talk about God. It's always a blessing to meet another brother, sister in Christ. So I'm going to head out and start my day, but hope to see y'all again. Have a great day, Zen, and thank you once again. Welcome to the family, and God bless on your journey.